Colonel Parker marched over and he says, "Oh," he says, "what, that symbol there? Did you get permission to use that? It's copyright." And Wayne goes, "Oh, well, we're from Australia." "Oh," Colonel said, "that's all right." It was such a big thing seeing Elvis in person. All I could see was him. Colonel said, "No, I won't be bringing him to Australia. There's not enough money in it."
Hello again. Following on from my interview I did with Dave Wood a couple of weeks ago, the gentleman who saw Elvis's last two concerts, I'm doing another interview today with another Elvis superfan who saw Elvis live in 1976. So this is Gina from Australia. Gina, good to have you here. How are you doing today?
Thanks.
All right. So you've got a YouTube channel as well. It's Patrick's Place for Elvis fans. Have I got that right?
Yep, that's right. Yeah.
All right. Okay. What's Patrick at? Is that a nickname?
Well, it's a long story. When I first discovered YouTube, a girlfriend introduced me to it, and she said, "Oh, you can do it. You've got lots to talk about," because I was really into quilting and craft and all that sort of stuff, and cats. So I started Patrick's Place. Patra was the name of my first cat. So Patrick Cat, you see.
Right,
So
right, right.
eBay, Amazon, everything. That was my, online name. And so
Okay.
that's on with YouTube. And then that was going for a while. I started putting Elvis stuff on it. And people kept on saying, "Why have you got all this craft and this other rubbish on your channel?" And I said, "Well, it's not an Elvis channel." So I thought, okay, I'll make an Elvis channel. Patrick has
Yeah.
Elvis fan. And
People
that's what
don't people yeah, I think people don't like it when you have two very different things on one channel.
yeah, that's right. I'll learn that. Very
Yeah. It's got to be one thing or the other. Yeah.
good. So I've still got the other one going for the other stuff, but, the Elvis one's the busiest.
Right, right. So Dave saw Elvis in 77 and I believe you saw him in 76. So can you tell us first of all how the trip came about?
Well, in 1976, of course, there was no internet, no email, no mobile phones, anything like that. So you had pen friends, and I've got to say that a lot of the younger fans don't realise how busy the fan clubs were in those days, just doing things by phone and letter, And we had meetings, we had film nights, we had barbecues, all sorts of things to keep in touch because we didn't have the internet, so we kept in touch physically. Anyway, Wayne, my husband, had a pen pal in San Francisco, and she wrote over to him in 1976 to say, "Elvis is doing a concert over here, or here in San Francisco, and I've got spare tickets. If you like to fly over, you can stay at our place and we'll take you to the concert." Well, yeah, wow. So that's how it happened.
So can you describe the build up to the show?
Okay, well, Eddie, bearing in mind it took about a week to get a letter from Melbourne, San Francisco. When she wrote to us, we got the letter and we said, "Oh wow, this we'd love to go," but we had to organise airfares, passports, time off work, and so on.
Sure.
And I lost my train of thought there. By the time we sort of organised, it took a couple of weeks, and then we wrote back to her. A month had gone by since she wrote to us. And she thought, "Oh, they're not going to come all the way from Australia." So she sold the ticket to someone else.
Oh no.
When she got our letter saying we were coming, she nearly died. She said to her girlfriend, "What am I going to do? I've got these people
Uh,
coming to Australia to see Elvis, and I sold the tickets." It turns out her friend was married to the manager of the Cow Palace, which was the venue where Elvis is going to be appearing. And she told her husband, and her husband said, "Let me see what I can do." Now, in some venues, they have what they call dignitaries boxes, like box seats on the side of the stage for
yeah.
special people. And because it happens a few months, we got the invitation a few months before the concert, those hadn't been taken. And so her husband said, "Look, Hetty's friends can have the seats, but it's going to cost them $50 each." And, we didn't care. That's 50 when you're $2,000 for airfare, another $50 is
Oh
nothing.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So we didn't know this until we got there. We got to San Francisco on Saturday morning. Hetty and her husband met us at the airport, spent the weekend with them. All Elvis, Elvis, Elvis all weekend, And on Sunday night, we drove out to the Cow Palace. We had our tickets, and Hetty went off into another direction, and the usher took us down, and we could, because I don't know if do you know what the Cow Palace looks like? It
So what?
holds the Cow Palace, the venue. It's a big arena. It holds 16,000 people, and it's got
Right.
like an arena like at the bottom, and then which is surrounded by tiers of seats looking down on it. Okay, so the
Right. Yeah.
stage is at one end of that arena, and we were walking down, following the usher right down to the front, and got these front row seats. We couldn't believe, because Eddie didn't know we were sitting either. Her girlfriend said they've got good seats, and that's all she said. So,
Right.
wow. So we're sitting there waiting for the show to begin, and we noticed two people standing nearby that looked familiar. And I said, okay, that looks like Colonel Parker and Linda Thompson. It was Colonel Parker and Linda. They turned around and they saw us, and we had our fan club T-shirts on, Elvis Presley Fan Club of Victoria. Well, Colonel Parker marched over and he says, oh, he says, what, that symbol there, did you get permission to use that? It's copyright. And Wayne goes, oh, well, we're from Australia. Oh, Colonel said, that's all right. Don't worry about it. Started talking to Wayne about the Australian Fan Club and all that, and I started talking to Linda. And we were talking about 20 minutes, and Wayne sort of barreled the Colonel with all sorts of questions that, things that, why doesn't Elvis travel overseas? Well, is he going to come to Australia? And that was interesting because Colonel said, no, I won't be bringing him to Australia. There's not enough money in it. And that sounds bad, but he went on to explain. Now, you've got to bear in mind that America was the only country in the world that had those huge stadiums. In Melbourne, for instance, our biggest stadium held 2,000 people. You could not bring someone like Elvis to Australia to do a concert, in a stadium holding 2,000 people. Okay.
Sure.
I mean, even though we haven't got a big population, it'd still be at least 1 million people coming from all around the scene. So we got it. We understood that. And also, Colonel Parker said the security, we don't know overseas, the police force, the security systems. We know America. We know all the big cities, towns in America. But going overseas, it's a real gamble. He said there's a lot of things we'd have to consider before Elvis. And Elvis, even though he told people he wanted to travel, he might have in one way, but he said he didn't. He was scared. He really was quite scared that he'd go over to any country out of America, and have the audience saying, oh, he's not as good as we thought he was. In America, he knew he was loved. People had seen him and they knew what to expect. But overseas, isn't that amazing to think that someone like Elvis could think that? He just didn't have that confidence.
Yeah. But I suppose it was quite similar when he had to do the TV special. He was very nervous, wasn't it? And he said he always had stage fright, like before every concert. But I guess the difference between the TV special and going abroad was that, the TV special had been arranged. You had to do it.
That's
Whereas
right.
overseas concerts,
Yeah.
Parker was never going to arrange anything like that. So it was never a problem he had to deal with.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's talk that he would have, like not long after he died, didn't it? Because a couple of years' time, maybe he would have, but things have changed by then. Maybe it's hard to say.
Yeah.
We'll never know, I suppose.
Well,
But yeah,
I'm sure he would have, had such tours been arranged, he would have done it, and it would have been great.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. But the stadiums, the places just weren't big enough. There wasn't anywhere else in the world that had those stadiums that they had in America. I mean,
yeah.
16,000 people, and that was, sort of average for America. Anyway, so we're sitting there, and the lights went dim, and they started playing 2001, and everything so excited. And a single spotlight was sort of roving over the audience and on the stage, and come over to where we were sitting and stopped. And Elvis walked out from behind the stage, and he walked right past us. He was this close. I could have reached out and touched him.
Wow.
I'm dying. I'm glad I'm screaming. I said, it's really Elvis. It's really Elvis. I've been a fan. I was 28 years old. I've been a fan for 16 years. I've got all these records, seen all these films. But he was over there on the other side of the world. It was like in my imagination. And to see him, it just blew my mind. It just blew my mind. I'll never forget it. I have to say it's the most exciting thing that's ever happened to me in my whole life.
Right.
And
how did he look? Because at 76 he wasn't in the best of health, was he?
He was fantastic. This is November 1976, right?
Yep.
And seeing him close up like that, he was so handsome. Oh my God, the pictures do nothing. You just couldn't believe how much better looking he was. He was tall, long legs, broad shoulders, suntan skin, and dark, long eyelashes, and his eyes were like sapphires. They were like a dark greeny blue, gorgeous. And I said to Linda, because she was standing, I said, where are they getting these photos from? He's not fat. And Linda said, he's had health problems, and he did have a bit of, he had the fluid on his lungs and stuff was blood making him bloated from time to time. And she said he's not long been home from a health spa in Palm Springs. She said you're really lucky to be seeing him when he now. She said he's at the moment he's at his peak. So obviously, that was we were lucky because apparently not long after that he went downhill again. His health got bad. So he
Right.
was. But it was there. Elvis was never fat. He had the belly maybe because of his diet, but because of the diabetes and everything else, the colon, everything else that was wrong with him. But his legs were thin and his arms. You know what I mean? He wasn't an obese person in any way. I always argue with people about that. Elvis wasn't fat. Some of the photos made him look fat. Some of the way they took it. But yeah.
So that show that he did at the end of the year, New Year's Eve, is considered to be one of his better shows of that last part of his career. So how what was it like in November? That was just like the month before that you saw him. Was it a good show that he gave?
He was on stage for an hour and 20 minutes and he sang 26 songs. His voice was just phenomenal. Again, better than his records. You wouldn't have believed it. But the power. Okay, you've got microphones all over the stadium and that. And the funny thing was, when I look back, I can't remember the band. I know they were there, of course, the Sweet Inspirations, but it was such a big thing seeing Elvis in person. All I could see was him. I can't remember anything else.
Right.
And he walked. He interacted with his audience. Talking to the fans and stuff, and talking to the band and making fun, having fun. He was obviously in a good mood. We thought he seemed
Right.
to be. And he would walk. He didn't stay in one spot. He's staying to the people in front of him because he was surrounded by people, on either side of the stage.
Sure.
Walk over to the other side of the stage and he'd sing to the people over. And then he'd walk over there and he'd sing. And then he'd turn around and he'd sing to the people behind him. And of course, every time he faced a different direction, you get 1,000 flashbulbs would go off. And no wonder the poor guy was nearly blind. I was just blind.
Mm-hmm.
Before we left Australia, I went to a professional photographer and I said, I'm going to go and see Elvis in concert. I don't know where I'm sitting, so I want to get some good photos. And he said, well, forget about your Instamatics. Do you remember Instamatic cameras?
Yeah.
Because I was all of age then. He said, go out and buy a professional camera, a good camera with an interchangeable lens. You'll need a telephoto lens and a close-up lens, depending on where you're sitting. And he said, don't use a flash. All that does is illuminate the person in front of you. And he said, don't use Kodak film. He said, Kodak film is fine for family snaps. He said, use fast film like Ilford or Agford professional film. So I did all those things, and I got really good photos. So I was photographing sort of where I could. Elvis was moving around the stage. At one stage, he was walking over toward us, and I thought, this is my chance. This is my chance to get a really good photo. So I stood up and I screamed, Elvis, I love you! And he heard me, he was close, And he looked at me and grinned, a beautiful smile. And he said, I love you too, honey. And I
Oh wow.
just melted.
Did you take the picture of that? Did you get a picture at that moment? Yeah.
You've seen those on my channel, the photos of the concert?
What's that?
Have you seen the photos I took of the concert? They're on my channel.
No, I haven't seen the pictures. No. Are they on a video or are they?
They're on, and when you open up the channel, there's a little bit there with the photo of me and Wayne standing in front of Graceland. And if you click on that,
yeah.
I've got
Another video, yeah. Yeah, I can see it, yeah.
And that one.
Oh, they are, yeah, they're even in this resolution, I can see that they're better than your average fan snap.
Yeah, really, really great. Yeah, so very lucky. Yeah, just different ones. There's about 20 of them. They were slides,
Very
actually.
Good. Did you say that you were to one side? I know you were very close.
On the side of the stage.
Right, yeah.
We're in the front row, but on one side of it. Mm-hmm. So we came out and he walked past us because the steps going up to the stage were right in front of us, and he came out and he's there and he walked up the steps.
Right. Did he do the scarf throwing routine?
Oh yes, yeah, he did. He was throwing the scarves out, but that was more at the front of the stage. And
sure.
Wayne said to me, you're going to go and get a scarf. I said, you must be joking, because every time he had a million fans.
Yeah.
would crush into the stage. And I said, I'd get crushed. I'm only 5 foot nothing. And then
Right.
looked at me. And she said to me, honey, I'll get you a scarf. And she walked over to Elvis and he looked down at her and he gave her a scarf. I guess he probably realised that she was getting it for another fan, for a fan, yeah.
Right.
And gave it to me, and that's how I got my scarf.
Oh, you got one then. Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
I wonder if any fans ever got hurt from scrapping over those scarves.
I believe they did. Yeah, I believe. Apparently, Elvis was quite concerned about it. There's quite a lot of different books, they read about people that went to his concerts and the photographers like Sean Shaver. Sean Shaver.
Mm.
You know him.
Oh yeah, yeah.
His books and some of the other photographers that wrote books, Albert Wertheimer, and they said how the fans just went crazy. Yeah, a few of them did get hurt, and they say if Elvis was aware of it, he'd stop singing and he'd say something. Apparently, come on, stand back and somebody's been hurt and do that. So he was very aware of it if it was happening in front of him. Yeah. Yeah, that's why I didn't want to go walking in front of the stage because I was too dangerous.
Yeah. So you said you saw him at Cow Palace. I think he did two shows, didn't he? Do you remember, was it the 28th or the 29th that you were there?
29th. There's
All right,
Sunday.
okay, yeah.
Yeah, so we went on the Sunday on the first one.
So that concert has been released, hasn't it, by FTD?
No.
29th, I think.
Oh, 29th, maybe, but not the 28th, no.
Yeah, you saw the second one, right? The 29th?
No, the first one. 28th on the Sunday.
The 28th, yeah. So that one, I think it's on bootlegs.
I've got a couple of bootlegs of it. Yes.
Yeah. So I've got this one here. This contains the 29th show.
Ah, okay.
Same venue, the Cow Palace.
Yeah, different outfit.
Yeah, the 28th is available on, as you say, bootlegs. Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you remember much of the show itself? Were there any highlights as far as songs go?
Well, gee whiz, where do I start? It's Now or Never. It's Now Whatever. You could have heard a pin drop while he sang that, and his voice just went through the roof. It was just unbelievable. He just sang that beautifully. Hurt, make it another one. His voice was fantastic, and he sang America the Beautiful. You mentioned it was their bicentennial year, and that was beautiful. The audience just went nuts when he sang that. And Fever, when he sang Fever, oh, that was fun.
Right.
I remember Wayne did a write up about it, and he mentioned, he said when Elvis sang Fever, he said he knew what he was doing to his fans. They were wetting themselves. They were really wet. You're standing there.
When he does Fever, I think it was later in his career. I haven't seen any video footage of it, but when he's performing it, at some point in the song, he sort of makes a noise like what? Do you know what he's doing there?
No, because when we saw it, he sang it straight. He didn't do it, but what he was doing with the microphone was actually quite obscene. Girls just never stop screaming. And if you could do that sort of thing, you couldn't do it in Las Vegas. I mean, it was, straight. And he couldn't have done it on a TV show if it was being televised, And I wish somebody had been there with a camera, or maybe somebody has. I don't know. But I love to. But to see him acting like that with that microphone and what he was
right.
Oh, he's a naughty boy.
So what did you make of the introductions? Because his introductions were really long at that stage of his career, weren't they? Like about 20 minutes sometimes.
No, we sort of enjoyed them. I can't remember a lot about them, but we pretty much enjoyed everything about the whole concert. But the introduction, because he was talking to them, and Ronnie Tutt did a drum solo, and James Burton did a guitar, and I think I got the impression that Elvis was having a bit of a resting his voice. Because an hour and 20 minutes is a long time to be singing.
Yeah, I think that's the general consensus now, isn't it? That stage in his career, that the introductions were getting longer to give him a bit of a break. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what about the? I suppose the Amen would have been a new thing as well, wouldn't it? When he gets J.D. Sumner to do the dive bomber routine at the end. I suppose that must have been new for you as well.
Yeah, Yeah, it was, I suppose.
Because
Yeah,
we never got that on an album during his lifetime. But now
no,
it seems like every concert that FTD or anybody brings out, you've got JD doing
yeah,
the whoa at the end, and Elvis
yeah.
making it do it again and again.
I don't remember. I don't remember reading that in the concert. Like I said, yeah, it's been 50 years, and
Yeah,
um,
sure.
yeah, it's like the other guy who did the interview, David. Yeah, he said you remember his fade a bit. There was the things that I remember mostly when he walked out in front of us, and he was so close, and when he looked at me and smiled, and said "I love you too, honey." That's and some of his songs like "It's Now or Never" and "Hurt" and "Love Letters" because they're three of my favourite songs, and I thought
Right.
these are my favourite songs. How does he know? And "Fever." Um, yeah, and he didn't do, I don't remember him doing any karate moves. I think by then he wasn't doing the karate moves as much.
Yeah, yeah.
Wasn't as, but he had a bit of a wiggle when he's doing Teddy Bear and Don't Be Cruel. The old hips are removing. So, but I think the audience too, San Francisco, they're a pretty wild bunch there. And I think that's why he's playing up as much as he did,
Right.
doing a bit of the sexing, stirring up the girls.
So how did you feel when the music started up for the last song, Can't Help
Oh,
Falling in Love? You know it's going to be the last.
everybody went, oh, because I know. Yeah, but yeah, um, you just trying to make the most of it, I suppose.
Yeah.
Because before you realised,
Hmm.
what was going was fantastic, and then it was over, and you come out, and you're in a trance. Everybody walked out, and you could feel it. Everybody felt the same. What have we just seen? You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
even David, even then, you were aware that you're in the presence of somebody, an icon, a legend, even though before he died. And that when he was alive at that stage, I will never say Elvis is a joke, but he was to some people. Oh, Elvis is getting old. He's not relevant anymore. You know what people are like. But to
Yeah.
his fans, he was always the best. Um, and it was just after he died, you look back and think how lucky I was, you know,
Sure. Yeah.
to see someone live like that. Because as time goes on, he gets bigger. He just gets bigger. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Baz
Yeah.
Luhrmann
Yeah.
movies and all the other things that are going on around the world. Elvis, the records that are brought out, the videos, the DVDs, the CDs.
Sure.
It's just, you know, incredible. Yeah.
So did you buy any souvenirs when you were there? During the
Oh,
concert
well,
or
that was the
before the
second
concert?
time we've been to America. But the first time we went was in 1971. It was our honeymoon. And
Mm.
we travelled around by Greyhound. Well, naturally, we wanted to see Graceland. Um, so we didn't think about seeing him in concert because we had no way of finding out where he was or what he was doing. So
Mm.
at Graceland, well, you couldn't go in Graceland. So when people say to me, "Have you been to Graceland?" I say, "Well, yes and no," because I went there, I stood out the front gates, and Uncle Vesta was at the gatehouse, and it was just Wayne and I there because it was a really cold day. It was
Mm.
January, and we were talking to Uncle Vesta, and he said, normally I'd let the fans, if Elvis is done, go up and take photos of the house. But he said, Elvis is actually home now, Elvis and Priscilla and Lisa. And we're going, oh, it's so close and they're so far. Standing at the gates, he's up there.
Yeah.
But this isn't sorry. So it was really nice. He went up, he took the camera and he went up and he took some photos and came back. So that was as far as I got, as far as Graceland goes.
Mm.
And the second time in 1973, we went back for 3 months and we saw more of America. We've actually seen the whole 50 states because we travelled around by Greyhound. We aimed to see every state in America, and we did, including Alaska. But we went to Tupelo and stayed a few days in Mississippi for
Mm.
2 days. Saw the house, and that was funny because back then, 1973, when Elvis was still alive, it was just a shack on the side of the road.
What's
The,
that?
ha-
Oh, the shack was still there.
the house was just a shack on the side of the road with a sign up, Elvis Presley's birthplace. There was no
Right.
pub, nothing. You know how it's been
Mm.
made a real tribute area, nothing like that there.
Oh, right. It was just sort of stood there. Uh,
Yeah, it's funny when you think of what it is now.
wow.
Elvis was too, I suppose. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And then 1976, of course, we just flew over the weekend and saw him in concert. So, but their
Yeah.
souvenir, I don't remember. We mostly actually bought records because a lot of the records weren't available in Australia, and haunted the records, the big record stores in various parts of America, Texas, and so on. Uh, you know, bought up as much as we could put in our suitcases to go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. So, do you tell us about Elvis's popularity in Australia, sort of then and now? Is he
Well,
still well known?
it really annoys me when people knock his movies because, as I say, if you grew up in the 60s, going to the movies and as a teenager, Elvis's movies drew more people than anything. I mean, the exception might be things like Ten Commandments or Ben Hur, those
Mm-hmm.
sensational movies,
Blockbusters, yeah.
blockbusters, yeah. But Elvis's movies, on the day they opened in the city of Melbourne, there'd be queues of people snaking all around the block, waiting to go. And you had to see them 2 or 3 times. You had to go to the city 2 or 3 times in a row to see the movie because it wasn't on TV. It wasn't going to be on TV. There's no DVDs or VHS. You know what I mean? So yeah, these movies are popular, and it wouldn't. And we never thought about them being corny in those days. It was Elvis. Elvis had come on screen, and everybody would scream and cheer. So exciting! And his records had come out. We'd all buy his records. He was hugely popular, hugely popular. And like I said, you'd come out of the theatre and you'd be happy. You go to a movie these days and it's all drugs and violence and war and rubbish. You come out, I would come out depressed if I see some of the movies and all. But Elvis movies always made you happy, always.
Right.
And I think that's why when they're on TV now, people still watch them because they make you happy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think they're still shown on British TV as well. Obviously, I don't live there anymore, but as far as I know, they are still shown quite a bit on British TV.
Yep, and Australia. Yep, they are. And I know Elvis didn't like, some of his movies, probably a lot of them, but he had this. I wish, how can I say, I wish I could talk to him and say, Elvis, have you any idea how happy you made people with your movies? They might have seemed corny to you, and you mightn't have been happy doing them, but you were getting paid to do a job, and okay, whether it was a lot of money or not, it was your job to make movies, and I think Elvis is aware that this is my job, it's getting paid to do. But they fulfilled their role for his fans, because as Colonel Parker said, people knocked the fact that Colonel Parker kept him making movies for 10 years, and Colonel said it's the only way that people around the world could see him.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. That's true. 3 movies a year, we'd all be lined up there to see him. Happy, good stuff. And the fan clubs. I mean, Australia's a big country, as you know, and we're sparsely populated, and most of the population are in the capital cities. So in Melbourne, Sydney is 500 miles north, and it's Adelaide, South Australia's about 300 miles south. We would regularly travel on overnight train, back and forth between capital cities of Adelaide and New South Wales and Sydney, to be with the fan clubs there, to meet and have weekends over there.
Mm-hmm.
That's how keen we were. That's great. Yeah.
Very good. And is Elvis still well known now? Do young people know who he is?
Oh yeah. Oh God, yeah. Elvis in Australia. Yeah. Just wear a t-shirt and it was like, oh, Elvis, yeah, he's the king. I had a guy come out to my house to do some painting, and I've got Elvis everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Walked in the house, he said, oh, you wouldn't be an Elvis fan, would you? I said, no. And he said, oh, the king, he was great. I said, mate, you got the job, don't worry about quoting. He was good.
So just as a final thought then, where does that Elvis concert rank in terms of, the events that you've had in your life?
Oh, top. Absolutely. Nothing could top that. Nothing could top that. Yeah.
No hesitation.
No hesitation. No. How could you beat something like that, seeing Elvis in person? Even thinking about it, when I think about him walking out and being so close to me, I can feel my heart pumping again. It really was just the height. Wasn't expected. We weren't expecting him. We thought we'd see somewhere in the audience, but to be that close. And when he walked out, and people say, why didn't you reach out and touch him? I said, well, there were security guards everywhere. I couldn't have,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Mike was there and been talking to him. I don't think he would have appreciated it. Lunch grabbed Elvis.
Well, there's a funny scene in the movie, isn't it? The epic film where the concert's finished
Yeah,
and some
oh,
woman jumps on the stage.
but that's Las Vegas, wasn't it? Was that
What's
in Las
that?
Vegas? That was in Vegas, wasn't it? That was
Yeah,
in
in
Las Vegas.
Vegas. Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Yeah, and a
yeah.
lot. I imagine it'd be a lot easier to get on the stage than it would be in the
Mm,
States because the stages were right up off the floor. They had to be. You got thousands of people, and they go. You got that many people rushing toward a stage to get to someone. They had to be very sure they're going to get Elvis off safely. So yeah,
sure.
there's not too many people going. Some of the girl or some of the people that were standing at the edge of the stage, they might hand up, like throw things to Elvis, teddy bears or bras or panties and all that sort of stuff, keys, and he would pick them up and thank them. He was good like that, flowers, things like that. And some of them would hand up their children. They if they like little Elvis, they costumes and stuff. And
Yeah,
Elvis would
yeah,
take them on the stage and talk to them and kiss them and hand them back. But as far as people getting up on the stage, there were too many. The guards, the security guards, they were everywhere. They wouldn't have let
mm,
you. So you couldn't do it. Not without getting thrown off the stage before you even
sure.
got there. Yeah.
Mhm. All right. So no hesitation. The most exciting thing that's happened in your life. Well, I think
Yeah.
that's a good place to leave it. So thanks for sharing your memories. What was it again? November 1976 in San Francisco.
Yep.
Yep. How about anybody watching this? Were you there as well? If you were, or if you were on that tour, November, the West Coast tour, November 76, let us know if you were there and what your memories are of that tour. So I just want to say thanks again to Gina, and don't forget to have a look at her channel, Patrick Cat's Place for Elvis fans. Have I got that right?
Yep. That's it.
Yep. All
David,
right.
very much great to talk to you. I love your
All right.
channel. Great.
Thank you very much. And
Okay.
thanks for watching. See you in
Okay.
the next video.
Later.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you, Gina.